So I love this quote. It reminds me of what is required of us to do in order to have healthy, happy relationships. When we can no longer hide behind a role, we are pushed to present ourselves and then run the risk of real intimacy. And that's by Ann Wilson. I'm going to read it again. When we can no longer hide behind a role, we are pushed to present ourselves and then run the risk of real intimacy. And the way I like to think of the word intimacy is into me I see. So the ability to get present, to be authentic with ourselves, and then to be able to show that to those in our life we care about without hiding behind victim, rescuer, woe is me, whatever the story is, our job, our function in the world, who we think we are, who we want to be seen as. When we can truly be vulnerable and open ourselves and show others who we are, that is when the real relationship begins.
Beautiful.
I'm Stephanie Filardi. Welcome to Mind the Gap, the podcast. I believe many people fall short of living the life of their dreams simply because they get stuck in what I call the gap. The vision behind this podcast is to help you understand how to navigate the gap and in the process, awaken to the life that is waiting for you. It starts now. Let's go. Welcome, friends. Thank you for joining today. Let us begin with our 3 conscious breaths. So inhale, filling the belly, ribs, and chest. Exhale, open your mouth, let it out, make some sounds. Again, inhale, filling up, belly, ribs, and chest. Exhale and let it go. And one more time. Inhale, filling up, belly, ribs, and chest. Exhale, release, let go, surrender. So today's conversation is a continuation of episode 3 where I talked about relationships. And the reason why I'm bringing this back is because it has been has been the most popular of all of the episodes. And I am not surprised because no matter what we do in life, everything is relational, right? So whether it's at home or at work or in our day-to-day, we cannot avoid people. Well, most of us cannot avoid people, and not for too long. So this juicy topic of relationships is something that I personally love, and I want to talk about healthy relationships today. So as always, I like us to start with an intention. So even as I'm speaking now and you're hearing me say the word relationship, I'm wondering if there's something that's coming up in your body, if there's a feeling or if there's a thought of, some of you might be feeling absolutely blissful. Maybe you're in wonderful, loving relationships. Or maybe some of you are having a different experience and maybe there's some challenges. And then, of course, there's always the in-between. So maybe some relationships are working and other relationships aren't working. So again, beginning this practice and this conversation with an awareness of where you are here and now today. Because it's easy sometimes to get caught in the trap of looking to the past or projecting into the future when really all we have is this present moment. So taking a moment and being true with yourself, being authentic with yourself about how are you doing in the area of relationships. You could be focusing on maybe there's a certain specific relationship in your life, or maybe relationships in general. And what I have found is that how we do one thing in life is how we do many things. So just noticing that. Now, in our most intimate relationships, sometimes it's more challenging, right, than some of the superficial relationships. Because in our intimate relationships, we usually get more triggered. Because why? Because there's more growth opportunity. And I spoke about that in episode 3. If you look at relationships as a way to grow, then you will grow. And if you look to relationships simply for fulfillment, to make me happy, most likely you will be disappointed. So why is that? Well, there's a few things. I talked about happiness in episode 19 and if it's a choice. And I think a lot of the expectation that we place upon ourselves and on relationship to make us happy comes from maybe what we're hearing around us or some of just the collective thoughts about what it should be, perhaps how relationships are portrayed in the movies. So I think this is an opportunity to really get real with yourself and just think about not only the quality of your relationships in your life, but what is the relationship you have with yourself? What is the relationship you have with yourself? Because in my experience, unless we really understand that everything comes from who we are being, then really nothing in the outer world can change for very long. So noticing what is the relationship you have with yourself. And some people are wise enough to know that unless they love themselves, it becomes challenging to love another person. So that's part of this conversation is really, looking at what are the ways that you take care of yourself? How do you talk to yourself? How do you treat yourself? Are you important in your life? So it's an opportunity to learn about how you're being with yourself, because how you're being with yourself is often how you're going to be with somebody else. So thinking about relationships, there's a lot of people that want to have that perfect, let's say 10 relationship, right? They want to have that perfect 10 relationship where they feel supported and loved, and maybe it's juicy and romantic, and there's a true partnership, and there's a lot of joy, and we have each other's back, and we feel good all the time. And the question that I have to ask you is, if you want to have that level of relationship, do you currently have that level of relationship with yourself? Because if we want to have an authentic, positive, supportive, fun, juicy, loving relationship with somebody else in our life, we must have that relationship with ourselves first. And when we have that relationship with ourselves first and we cultivate that, we learn the tools, we learn the skills that we can extend to somebody else. So let me be specific. So there are many times in life where we fall into, let's say, the victim role, right? Why is this happening to me? And we make it all about us, or I want to be happy. Well, when we do that in relationship with other people, it's actually quite destructive because it kicks up a bunch of emotions and feelings that often can destroy the very thing that we seek. So let's say, for example, one of the things that we know about ourselves is that we are controlling for whatever reason, right? We've talked about this before. Let's say controlling and judgmental, right? So we like to have things a certain way. We don't like too many surprises. When things don't go our way, maybe there's a tendency to blame or to feel bad, basically to go into that victim role. So when we find ourselves in relationship and something isn't going our way, maybe somebody disappoints us, or maybe somebody made a promise that they were not able to keep for another reason, for some sort of a reason, the tendency might be to go into this victim, right? Or to go into blame or shame or guilt. And a lot of times that comes down to wanting to be right. Wanting to be right. So a lot of these concepts are pretty ingrained and conditioned. And when we're the type of person who wants to be in control, really we want to be right. And we want to be right because we want to feel safe. And we want to feel safe because maybe at some point in our life we didn't. So what I have to share with you about that is if you are able to recognize in yourself, in your life, where you want to be right and where you want to feel safe, and if you're able to recognize that you are the only person that can do that for yourself, you will notice how your relationships will change so that when your partner does something to, quote, disappoint you or let you down, your whole world doesn't have to fall apart. It doesn't have to ruin your day, your week, your month, your year. So instead of falling into the victim role, we can actually say, what was my part in this? Did I have a part in this? And use it as an opportunity to learn not only about the other person and what they might be going through, but also about the resources that we have within ourselves to be there for ourselves and to cultivate that feeling of safety within ourselves. And I don't want to get too deep here because a lot of these things that come up, these patterns that come up in our relationships are connected to things that happened when we were children. So then we become adults, but yet there's still that inner child that is not healed or has these triggers. So the thing that I want to say about, being right is, would you rather be right or be happy? Right? I think at some point in time in life, we get to a place where we simply want to love the people we're with instead of judging them. And I've had this experience in my life, and, it's quite profound when you recognize that, first of all, that maybe you are being that judging critic. And I don't know that we do it on purpose. So this is a conversation that is rooted in compassion and authenticity, as always. But if we walk around being critical of people and judging people, it's likely we've done that to ourselves, and we do that to ourselves first. So it's an extension of who we are that we project onto other people. Yet if we walk around life like that, who wants to be around that? Right? Do you want to be around somebody who you feel is always judging you or criticizing you? And it doesn't mean that we don't call each other out and hold each other accountable. It means that we have to take a step back and try to understand, right? So this place of awareness. So this is part of me kind of encouraging you to think about not only what it is that you do in your own life currently, but what kind of a relationship do you want to have with the people in your life, with your family, with your parents, with your siblings, with your children, with your significant other? Those are the primary ones. And then from there, we extend out, right, to friends and coworkers. But our inner circle, the people that we love the most, are often the ones that trigger us the most. And there's a reason for that. And it's because we care. If we didn't care, we wouldn't care, right? So sometimes the person we love the most, we can sometimes feel like it's the same person that we hate, right? And hate is a strong word, so I want to say dislike. And oftentimes the person that we fell in love with them because they were lighthearted and free and fun. And maybe a few years into it, we're like, wow, but they're not that serious. And we start judging them because they are that way. So it's really fascinating, this whole journey of relationships. And I will continue to talk about it in future episodes and unwind it a little bit more. But for now, I want you to think about, especially again, this time of year, the holidays, the end of the year, maybe having yourself, take some time to recognize, where are you in relationship? Where are you in relationship with yourself? Where are you in relationship with other? And what is your intention? What kind of relationships do you want to have in your life? I can tell you for myself, what's important to me is to have people in my life who are authentic, who are positive, who are supportive, who are willing to call me out and hold me accountable on my stuff. People who have a vision for their life, who enjoy life. It doesn't mean things are always going well and it's not about perfection, but to have people in your life who are authentic and true is a really powerful way to live in this world. So think about that. And the other thing I want you to think about, so in addition to the intentions, right? The intentions, what type of a relationship do you want to have? Think about maybe some of the patterns that you have noticed within your own relationships. So do you go into that victim role or do you go into the rescue role? Some of us want to fix people, right? And we know that we cannot change anyone. It is hard enough for us to change. So we cannot fix or change anyone. What we can do is believe in people and love them. And that's it. So that's also part of those triggers around control, right? We think that once we're in relationship, if we love them enough or we do enough for them, that maybe they'll heal, right? Maybe they'll heal that wound or that addiction or that problem that they're having. And the reality is that's not the reality. So I say that with all due respect and really considering, what are the patterns that you notice in your life? What shows up for you in relationship? Are there patterns or people that you continue to attract? Because sometimes we think it's outside of us and that we're, this is, again, the story of victim. I always attract this type of person, or every time I show up, this is what happens. And that's a story that's based on an underlying belief. And the way the universe works is that if you keep putting that out there, you're going to keep getting it. And I've said this a few different ways before, because our thoughts really do become things. And the tricky thing about thoughts is that our thoughts are actually informed by our beliefs. So unless you really do the work of understanding what your beliefs are, you actually can't change your thoughts, because so much of this is conditioned and it's unconscious. So that's why I say it's important to reflect and to notice if there's one pattern, like let's say you always attract people who you feel like you need to fix, right? I would encourage you to say, well, what's that about? Is there some sort of belief that I have that I'm not worthy, or that I'm not good enough, or that the only way someone's going to be with me is if I'm needed and I fix them, right? So, I'm not saying this lightly. I know these are rather complex and deep topics, but I'm offering it to you because I trust that you understand on some level what I'm saying. And if you're curious about what I'm saying, then maybe you'll notice where that belief of I'm not worthy shows up in other areas of your life. So really noticing those patterns. And then the third thing, so again, intention, what are the type of relationships you have is number one to reflect on. Number two is what are the patterns that you notice in your current relationships. And then the third thing is really honestly, if you want to attract a person in your life who is all those things, authentic, positive, who is, going to listen to you, who's receptive, a partner, a true partner in prosperity in all ways, you have to be that yourself first. So it's like if we want to attract that high vibe person, situation, thing, it's not going to happen if we're operating at a 2. It's not going to happen if we're walking around being negative, blaming people, shaming people, being critical and judgmental. It's not going to happen if we walk around as a victim. And it's not going to happen if we walk around as someone who wants to rescue everybody. So part of this, and I started the conversation with this, if you want to really love others, you have to love yourself. It starts always with us. And at the same time, if you want to attract that amazing, juicy, loving relationship into your life, then you must be that. You must be that. There's no other way. And if you're not that, you will continue to attract that which you are. And it's humbling sometimes to recognize that about ourselves. And yet it also is freeing, because once you have an awareness and you have an understanding, then you have something to work with, right? So it's important to give yourself the time and the space to really look and see what is it that you have cultivated, because what you have cultivated is exactly where you are. And that's why in other episodes as well, I've talked about, we have this idea sometimes that once we get that maybe perfect job or relationship, we're going to be happy. But if we're not happy today, it's not going to happen. So we have to start with where we are. We have to start by choosing to be happy in this moment and choosing to look honestly at our relationships, at the quality of our relationships. And then to be able to be willing to do the work. Because it is work. And I don't mean work in a bad way. Anything that you want in your life, that is amazing takes some kind of work. It takes some kind of effort and discipline, right? And knowledge and wisdom. So I want to leave you with this, something that I learned recently, actually. Some of us are highly emotional, right? So sometimes what happens in relationships is we get so triggered. We get so triggered that we allow our emotions to make the decisions. Meaning, we allow the emotion to cause us to either blow up, get angry, or maybe we do the opposite. Maybe we allow the emotions to cause us to avoid and disconnect and withdraw and choose maybe not to be in relationship. And there's other various behaviors in between those that we do sometimes to sabotage ourselves and our relationship. So we end up destroying the very thing that we want. And I have done this in my own life. So it's eye-opening. So this place of emotion, so we all have them. They come and go like the tide. I talk about all these practices of meditation to help us regulate and become more balanced. But here's what I'm going to leave you with. If you truly want a healthy relationship, a loving relationship, an amazing relationship, you have to be committed to that commitment more than your commitment to your feelings. So in those moments, in those dark moments, and I get them, I've been there. I'm a very passionate woman and I have a lot of emotion. When you are in those moments where your feelings are what feel like taking control of you, that is not the time to make a decision. That is the time to go inward and to do the work that you need to do. And sometimes it means you have to take some space, right? Physical space, emotional space, mental space. And you must commit to your commitment. Right? So your word, your commitment is all you have. That's all we have. And if you're committed to your commitment of having that healthy, loving, beautiful relationship, then you will naturally seek out and do the work of managing the emotions. Because in life, most of us do not achieve what we want because we get derailed by our emotional state, and we make it a priority and we commit more to our emotions and our feelings than we do to our commitment. So I want to leave you with that because I find that most people don't even know they're doing it. So this isn't an opportunity to, again, put yourself into victim and beat yourself up and all that story, noticing if you're doing that. It's an opportunity to stand in your power, to take a stand for your life and yourself and what you want and commit to your commitments. I believe in you. As always, reach out if you want to stay connected, if you have a question. And if there's anything in particular about relationship that you would like me to discuss and dive more deeply into, would love to hear from you. You can contact me via email at stephanie@bronxvillewellness.com. Stephanie, STEPHANIE @BRONXVILLE wellness.com on Instagram or Facebook. See you there. Until next time, enjoy it, notice it. Let's go.